Hello and welcome to Tax Tips and Updates. This is Michelle Burke coming to you live from Annapolis, Maryland. Many of you know after 30 years in the corporate tax world, I went out on my own in January and created health and taxes. There are only two things that are certain in life, death and taxes. I'm here to help you flip the switch on aging and keep the IRS at bay. I come to you every Wednesday with some tax tips and updates, mostly about the stimulus. But this week I added in LinkedIn and YouTube, so we'll see how that goes. It looks like YouTube is waiting for me, so let me click on that. Or maybe it won't work. We'll see. Anyway, I usually go on Facebook Live, but I'm trying to expand, so we'll see how that turns out. So today we're going to focus on a few things. We're going to do a quick update on the stimulus. We're going to get a bonus on the executive order that was signed today. We're going to talk about the deferred payroll taxes, an update on that. We talked about that last week as well. And then I also wanted to discuss a little bit about the PPP loans, because I know there's a lot of confusion out there with what's going on. So let's start. As you know, the senators have been out on vacation, and they're still out on vacation for one more week. But the Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, is suggesting that the senators will vote on the Republican stimulus package next week when they come back from vacation. There's been a new draft being worked on. It's being worked on currently. They're stating that it'll be more acceptable to the members of the House. Last I heard, the Republican draft through the Senate is at 1.3 trillion. They're willing to go up to 1.5 trillion. And the House, the last place that they were was 2.2 trillion. So we're closing in on the gap. So hopefully there can be some agreement next week, or at least a start for something to get signed and some moving forward. Secretary Mnuchin said that, it's fiscally responsible that another stimulus come out. So, I keep thinking that we'll have something to update, and there's just been this delay. But let's hope they come back from vacation with some renewed desire to move this forward. So stay tuned for that. In different news, President Trump signed another executive order today. This one stops landlords from evicting tenants. Now we know that there have been other orders before. This one and the original CARES Act had prevented evictions through 7/31. Then there was another executive order but wasn't able to be moved on or acted on. So this one now came out, and it will carry through the end of 12/31/2020. So just keep in mind that it'll stop the evictions. I know a lot of state levels. California came out with a rule today allowing for the same sort of thing. So there's state and the federal rules, but Trump is ruled on the federal rules. Now, to do this, a tenant would have to write a letter to their landlord certifying or stating that it is due to COVID financial hardship that they're unable to make their rent, and it's for single people with incomes less than 100,000 or married filing jointly with incomes less than 200,000. Now you still owe the money. It's just a deferral. You still owe the money. You just can't get evicted during this period of time. So it's not a waiver. It doesn't get you out of the rent payments. Now, I know on the flip side, the Landlord Association says that they're going to challenge the order because there are a lot of small families or family member or, small individuals small businesses that have a lot of properties or just a handful of properties. They still have to make their mortgages. So we will see what happens with that. But just wanted to update you on that little bonus. And then I wanted to update you a little bit further. Last week we talked about this payroll deferral. And since then, President Trump came out and said that 1.3 million federal employees will have this payroll deferral coming out in mid-September. So in 2 weeks, the payroll deferral will start. It is automatic for anybody making less than $104,000 a year, or it's $4,000 biweekly pay period. You'll automatically have the payroll taxes. So remember, this is the Social Security withholding, the 7.65%. That will not be deposited by your employer, will not be withdrawn for your check, so it'll increase your check. But also remember that this goes in effect for federal workers as of September 15th. For other workers, employers that adopted it, it started on September 1st already. I know a few people have contacted me to see if they can opt out of it, but if your employer is doing it, I don't believe there is a way for you individually to opt out. So then keep in mind that then the taxes will be repaid January 1st through April 30th, and they must be paid by April 30th. So what will happen is effectively there'll be double taxes paid or withheld during that period to make up for this deferral. Now, President Trump says if he's reelected, he will work with Congress to pass a law to permanently defer it, or permanently make it so that you don't have to pay it back, right? So we'll see on that. But there's still a lot of open questions. So what if you change employers and you have a new employer on January 1st? How does that work? Who's going to be withholding the double taxes, and how do they know? So there's a lot of weird questions. But in the meantime, for those of you that are having this, just kind of think of it as like a little interest-free loan between now and the end of the year. The last thing I wanted to update you on is the PPP. So there was proposals in the second stimulus to and separate proposals to increase to have a second round of the PPP. That is still out there. There's nothing further on that either. So you know, we thought for sure something was going to come in August, but it didn't. So stay tuned on a second PPP coming, and whether that's in the next stimulus or not. But I wanted to talk about, I know there's a lot of confusion over the first PPP loans. So first, what I want to say is that in order for the loan to be forgiven, it can be forgiven 100% or it can be partially forgiven. But for it to be forgiven, at least 60% of the funds received have to be used for payroll expenses. It originally came out and said 75%, and then it was modified later to 60%. And even if your paperwork says 75%, it is actually 60%. So that's a minimum requirement to get the loan forgiven. When the loan is forgiven, you have to apply to have it forgiven. So you have up until the time that the loan period expires, or you can file it earlier. So you can file it as soon as you use all the money within the first 24 weeks or 8 weeks if you're in the really early time period, but most of them are the 24 weeks. You have to file for forgiveness of the loan, and you have to prove that you spent use the funds on payroll and other eligible expenses such as mortgage, rent, utilities, all these different types of business expenses, right? So the other thing that's causing confusion is typically in the tax code, if you have loan forgiveness or cancellation of indebtedness, that is typically taxable income to you. However, under the CARES Act, and in this program specifically, this forgiveness of a loan is exempt income. So it's tax exempt income. So it will not be taxed to you once it's forgiven. Okay, so I just want to make that clear that it's not taxable. What else you need to kind of understand is normally, so you receive funds, you spent that on payroll reduction, tax reductions, mortgage, rent, all these things. Normally you would take those expenses and you would file your tax return. You would take deductions for those expenses. So now you have no income for this item. You may still have, you know, partially reduced revenues that you're generating this year. But to the extent you have this tax exempt income, how you used it for these expenses, those expenses are not deductible. So you don't get to double dip. So the income and expenses just kind of wash, they don't go on your tax return. So hopefully that makes sense. And if you have any questions on that, please comment below. Please reach out to me. I'm happy to take any questions on that and help you understand that. So that's all I have for you today in terms of updates. Hopefully with the Labor Day vacation coming to an end, hopefully next week we have a lot more activity and a lot more information on the stimulus. So just as a reminder, I come to you every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern with tax tips, updates. Please feel free to comment below things that you would, topics that you'd like me to talk about or that you would like further explanations on. I'm happy to do that. But thank you for joining me, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.